All right, so welcome. We got Greg on the line from Oshkosh and in Wisconsin, one of the cheeseheads. This is Ron Oglesby with Unidesk, and this is the first ever Unidesk Underground podcast chat up with one of our customers. I'm obviously broadcasting from the underground bunker in Plainfield, Illinois. And Greg, how you doing today, man?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Yeah, I see you got the lava lamp in the background there.
Yep, just keeps the office casual.
Keeps it casual? Nice, nice. So anyway, we wanted to catch up with a bunch of customers and people doing VDI, maybe Unidesk, maybe not, and just, chat them up a little bit, talk about what's going on in their environment, maybe dig into, how they're dealing with apps or, what they're seeing performance-wise, what their end users are saying, stuff like that. Why don't you just, give the folks listening like a minute overview of what you guys are doing out there.
All right. I work for the Management Information Office, which is the Department of Residence Life for UW Oshkosh campus. It's our IT department. So not to sound cliche, but we're kind of a by-student, for-student operation. Besides myself and one other coworker and my boss, everyone else is 100% students. So we have quick turnovers, and you have to have a complete knowledge transfer every 2 to 3 years as people graduate and move on. So as you can imagine, we're a very dynamic group. We've got a lot of energy, a lot of young students working for us, but the knowledge transfer of, hey, we've been doing this for the last, 5, 6, 7 years, is not there anymore. So it's a very short-sighted, looking back point of view.
Yeah, but doesn't it also, if you're turning over that much, one of the issues I see with VDI is you go in somewhere and we've been packaging this way for 7 years. We have this tool and a team that's been using it for 5.5 years. Does that, not just with VDI, but with anything, does that change the way you guys look at technology because you are constantly retraining everyone?
It really does. I'm one of the few. I've been here for about 7 years now, and I was a student for 4 of those years and moved on full time. I'm the only one who remembers us ever being a Novell shop. So my current students are like, Novell, what? So the old way of we use ZenWorks to deploy apps, we snapshot and things like that. No one has that mindset, so everyone's looking forward, thinking, okay, how can we get this out here? So for them, imaging is installing an application using Ghost and clicking or Ghost in a whole machine and deploying it. That's been our deploy in their looking back. We've just dwindled down finding enough qualified staff to keep my LAN department running that we've looked for other alternative, and that's where VDI has kind of helped us. We're getting it off the ground, getting going with it now, is that my staff of 3 students running the whole LAN department in a 6-host 80 VM server or 80 server VM environment, that's how we can keep the lights on, is with VDI, leveraging that for the day-to-day operations, the updates, things like that we can keep that. It's makes it a manageable workload, and we can provide a better service to our users, and that's kind of the goal for VDI here, what the goal of VDI is here. That's
interesting. And there's a call for you. They want you to fix VDI.
I'll call back.
So it's interesting, and I hadn't really thought of that until you had mentioned the turnover that you see, your staff as students and whatnot. I'd worked in a lot of university and college environments, but I hadn't really thought about the turnover. Boy, they're all over, man. You got your cell phones.
All right, there we go. No, that'll be the next one. That's silenced already.
All right.
Yeah, that's the thing is most IT operations don't operate that way. Yeah. And yes, the counter that is, well, we should just document things better. But it seems to be our operation, by the time we document it, it's changed already. So we do, knowledge transfer person to person, tribal knowledge, the mentality is how we operate for a lot of our companies.
And even in the corporate world, let's say we take out your environment for a second, isn't it always that and I'm guilty of it myself, that when we write the job description, because we're looking to hire replacements or additional staff, we write the job description saying, you must know, here's all my tools. You must know, if I'm a Citrix shop, you must know Citrix, you must know provisioning server. If I'm a traditional LAN shop, you must know SCCM and Win install packagers or whatever. We're kind of self-perpetuating. We're not saying, come in and bring your new ideas and thoughts. You're a general desktop guy. in the corporate world, that tends to come from up top, where you get a new CIO, you get a new CTO, a VP of infrastructure, where in your world, there's just constant people coming in, so there's always new ideas.
You don't bring a lot of freshman, sophomore students in who has 3 years experience with SCCM or even vCenter, things like that. So everything's trained from the ground up, which is where you kind of get a lot of aha moments going, oh, I get why we do that. But also there's ways that I've been a student doing that for the last 3-4 years that I'll get a student going, well, why are we doing it that way? It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm like, that's a valid point. So we get a lot of fresh set of eyes kind of poking holes, or if nothing else, the lazy factor is going, well, that's a lot of work. Is there an easier way of doing that? We have an internal phrase in the office, the Divine conjecture, where we had an old employee years ago, last name Divine, where he once spent 45 minutes scripting a 15-minute fix. So now the question is, okay, can we automate that? Yeah, but is it worth it? I've got 5 staff. You'll have 2 feet. Can we walk out there and do it quicker? So that's nothing to do with VDI, but that's just the mentality that we have. So it makes us look back at our tasks. And sometimes, yes, we found a lot better ways of doing things, be it our imaging process even before VDI. A lot more stuff gets automated. A lot more stuff gets scripted. We're leveraging group policy a lot better now because we've brought fresh set of eyes in thinking, well, hey, why are we naming it by hand? Does the name matter? Does it need to be named department dash the person's last name? No, department dash number works well enough. So that's one thing. Suddenly I have a rack full of hardware that can go out there versus, well, your machine's not ready yet. Well, the 3 other next to it are exactly identical, bought the same time. Those are ready, but we haven't imaged yours yet. So
that's very cool. That's almost like an article or a series of article topics just in itself, fresh ideas in desktop and LAN management versus just, hey, here's why I did VDI. But that's I might have to dig into that. You might have just given me some articles for ideas for a new article there. But I do want to dig on the VDI side. I mean, hopefully people that tuned in might want to hear VDI stories. So, I mean, you're obviously a Unidesk customer. You're one of our more vocal customers. You're on Twitter all the time. There's things going on there. And let's put this in the context of the discussion we just had on desktops. You are bringing in new staff. It's exacerbated as compared to even corporate IT, but I would like to think that VDI is new to a lot of people, right? People are doing VDI, whether you're in a corporate world and you've been using SCCM forever, people are doing VDI. So the question is, if you use Unidesk, I know you use VMware View, what pushed you towards Unidesk that was incorrect or not working for you on the View side, let's say, or on the general VDI side?
It's quite literally reading the back of the box of software from Unidesk is that the life cycle of software. When I initially started using or looking at View or VDI in general, View 4.6 was out, and I really had a pretty good proof of concept going. I was on our typical previous imaging mentality. Let's set it up. We've got one image for everyone. Let's put all the apps we could ever need. Do you need Visual Studio? I don't care. It's on the image. Put it, essentially freeze it or make the gold out of it, deploy it. I didn't have enough users at that time to really understand the bigger picture of how am I going to maintain that. Our previous mentality was we image twice a year. So at worst case, your Firefox is 6 months old. Your Windows patch is 6 months old. We froze the machines, no matter what, it would roll back. So exploits for us weren't an issue. When I start considering VDI and the user case that I have, some of the users I want to bring onto this environment were the ones who actually earned a frozen or a thawed machine, where they could make changes, they could install applications. And then my first recompose kind of brought it to my light going, oh, well, I just killed that application, or just killed that application. Same time we started using Chrome. Well, Chrome releases every 6 to 8 weeks. Firefox decided to follow suit. Every 6 to 8 weeks there's a new version. So the daunting task of, what do we realistically want to do? Do we want to keep everything up to date? Do we want to just say it's going to be 6 months old? Do we want it 3 months old? It really made me look back at my operation. What am I trying to accomplish? In the end, I wanted to be less management work for us. I wanted to have less images to take care of. I wanted to take hardware abstraction so that their desktop machine is not the point of failure. Their data does not live in their environment. We've had really bad power issues in the last couple of years where we've been off. We had no power for 36 hours one day. So continuation of operations came up to, buzzwords, things like that. How are we going to recover from that? Luckily, that operation happened when students weren't here, so it was just a couple of staff put out. So that's what made me look at my environment to think, okay, where's the shortcomings? And that's where the user installed applications that Unidesk allows, the layering, the selection. Just a couple days ago, we started. We've been giving our internal programming department does a lot of Visio diagrams before that. So we'll make a Visio diagram. Okay, here's what the application we wanted to build for you is going to look like. Well, someone emailed a Visio to a department, or someone in a different department. They're like, well, what do I do with this? They had no Visio access. Like, well, hang on a second. I can log in, click Visio layer, give it to them. They rebooted. Voila, they had the Visio. Yeah. So.
Or they could have, in a Unidesk world, they could have downloaded the Visio reader just from Microsoft and installed it. And even though they never needed Visio and you didn't need to license them for it, they would have been able to read all those documents, and it would have persisted through the recompose. So that's interesting. I mean, I'd like to also ask a question more in the education field. One of the things that we're always amazed at on Unidesk is that our initial claim to fame was user-installed apps, and our application layering we thought was cool and simple, but we pretty much figured education, with 80% of their environment non-persistent, people wouldn't, we'll just throw Composer in there and everything will be great. Are you in that 80%, and where a lot of your machines are non-persistent, or is it mostly persistent?
Yes, by total desktop count, we are far more non-persistent. We're one of the few universities that still offer in the hall computer labs. Okay. So each hall has 6-10 computers, so the students can go in on their quick access. A different department of campus manages the general computer access computer labs on campus, which are across campus. But we run, I believe, about 90 to 100 desktops in varying hall, each per hall that we have. The students can go down there and get access to. So that's what we manage, and that's mostly what our non-persistent pool would be, or our force. But those machines are pretty simple because we have one image. We've had that, so the desktop count is up for that, but the management workload is minimal because we haven't transitioned those to VDI yet. So even in a thick deployment, we have 1 or 2 versions of hardware because we buy them in lots. We have maybe 1-2 images out there. Put it out there, change the name, set the printer, and freeze it. The workload wasn't there for us yet, and that will be the next low-hanging fruit as we want to start extending the life cycle of that hardware. Campus went to Windows 7 last year. Most of our equipment met that. Some didn't, so we had a pretty heavy hardware refresh that VDI would have helped us with last year on that process, or previous years when we were buying that. But the current lab cycle has these computers getting replaced in, I want to say, 2 years. So at that point, converting the machine to essentially what we call a thick term, or nothing but a VDI access portal, will probably hopefully what we'll do.
That's interesting.
The management nightmare, which we kind of did to ourselves, is we started buying Mac hardware for all of our staff, and we used VMware Fusion to essentially run a Windows VM inside their Mac. We were doing dual booting, but it was taking too much time to switch back and forth. Some users would stay on the wrong side. We have some apps that require them to use Windows. Some software management, video surveillance, they have to use Windows for that. And then we have the calendar app, which we use iCal for, which they have to use Mac. So Fusion was a great fit for them 3 years ago because they could run both. They could flip-flop back and forth. Windows 7 came out, so suddenly the VM needs 2 gigs of memory. Yep. So you've halved your Mac, and we realized that a Type 2 hypervisor is a management nightmare where we had to go there with them out there. We had to have them log in, step aside, let us log in, and set up their machine for them. So that's where my goal this summer is to completely replace all the local hypervisors with VDI, with Unidesk, with View, so that when they need the 3 Windows apps, they can switch to that app, log in, get to that, and then go back to about their business day-to-day on their Mac without their Mac having to run 2 desktops.
Well, then they get full horsepower to Mac then, and they're not complaining to IT that something is slow.
And we have users the same way that also want full horsepower. That they'd never use the Mac side. They'd log into Fusion full screen it and they had a Windows box. You would never ever see anything besides the start bar on their machine because they prefer Windows. They're comfortable with Windows.
Yeah.
So at least now I can provide a better Windows environment for both sides.
No, that makes sense.
They'll get a better environment. They won't complain that their Firefox is 6 months out of date because we'll be maintaining that for them.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. We're coming up on my 20-minute self-imposed limit here because I knew you and I would just get going back and forth and not stop. But we'll be seeing you later this week. I'll buy you a beer and a cheeseburger or something. But
sounds good.
Yeah. My final question I'd like to ask is, with our layering technology and what we do for the application side, and you had mentioned, hey, I just assigned the Visio layer off to this user and restart them. Who makes your application packages? I had someone earlier this week say, I'm sick and tired of AppVert because he's the only guy in his big company that can ThinApp or AppV packages successfully 95% of the time. Everybody else is 50%, if that. And so it's really an art and a skill. Do you have these students, these part-time people, they make apps? Yes,
my LAN department, which they're fairly well trained. They're vCenter admins. That they keep the lights on for our department. They'll virtualize. They'll layer most of the applications. Some of the trickier ones, I'll work with them. We'll architect. We'll break out the whiteboard and decide what we want to do for that to best lay it out. But the day-to-day applications, I have essentially a shared Excel file, Google Docs file with them. Here's our to-do list. Hey, Firefox needs an update. Skype needs an update. Things like that. So the management for that is done. Take it one further, the deployment to that is also not done by us. With Unidesk delegated administration, I have our help desk manager has middle-level access to Unidesk. She's the one who answers the phone, can assign it layers without knowing what you need setting it up. So someone calls saying, hey, I don't have Visio, I don't have Office, I don't have this. She'll handle it themselves, instruct them to restart. We don't get a call. So Tier 2, Tier 3 help desk doesn't have to deal with that.
That's amazing. I worked at CMU for a while doing their data center moves for their ResLife guys and Citrix installs and all that. And the people we had, as they called them interns there, they're part-time students, they were good folks. Most of them were IT savvy from a user perspective. They could install apps and stuff, but there was no one that I would have looked back and said, I'd trust that guy making my Citrix packages. I'd trust that guy making my AppVert packages. But the idea that you can delegate that down, and for most of the apps just have student employees be able to make application layers it's unbelievable to me. It's great. It's great.
It's been far less work for myself and for some of my teams. So
well, and of course, what would that mean if we take it out of education? That would be a huge benefit on the corporate world, because when you do turn over people or you're hiring or expanding, we had talked about the training earlier. If you can get student part-time employees to package apps, in the corporate world, it's going to be a boon for retraining staff. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, Greg, I'm up on my 20-minute self-imposed limit here. I will obviously be seeing you later this week. We're getting together for that users group and all that. Any final words or anything you want to say before we wrap this up?
No, this has been good. This has been fun.
Great. I'm going to have you on for another one. Maybe
Sounds good.
I can't have you for the first 5, but maybe what I'll do is do a couple more and come back to you if you don't mind.
Yeah, gladly.
All right. That'd be great. Thanks a lot, man.
See you.